There are some days that change everything. When the sky darkens, where rocks crack and the earth quakes and the curtain tears, where hearts stop, not just in grief, but in awe. Today is that day. This is not the day of a martyr, not the death of a teacher. This is the day that the king died. And not just any king, the king. The one who came not with the sword, but with a towel. Not to take a life, but to give it. And not just to give it, but to lay it down. Jesus didn't die in spite of his love. He died because of it. And the systems of the world, the empires of control, the powers of the elite, and the passions of the crowd, they couldn't handle that kind of love, so they did what they always do. They tried to crush it. But the cross didn't come out of nowhere. It began in whispers, in a room full of plots and plans, and the flicker of a candle and the clink of 30 coins. It began with betrayal, with a kiss. The plot was already underway. The chief priests and elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest. They schemed to arrest Jesus and kill him. Not during the festival, they said. Not when the city was full, but their plans were already too late. Because Jesus had already set his face toward the cross. Meanwhile, a woman approached him at a meal in Bethany. And she carried an alabaster jar of perfume, costly and precious, and she poured it on his head as he reclined at the table. Now the disciples were indignant. This could have been sold for the poor, but Jesus defended her. She has prepared me for burial. Maybe the only one in the room who understood what was about to happen was the one who had no words. She just wept and poured it all out. And then came Judas. He slipped away from the table. He went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I hand him over to you?" And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, he looked for an opportunity to betray him. That opportunity came in a room upstairs. Jesus was gathered with his disciples. He took the bread and said, "This is my body." Then he took the cup. He said, "This is my blood of the covenant poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." He didn't give them a theory. He gave them a meal. And then he looked them in the eye and he said, "One of you will betray me." They were filled with sorrow. Each one asked, "Surely not I." Even Judas asked. And Jesus replied, "You have said so." And then they sang a hymn and went out into the night. And then a garden. He took Peter, James, and John. He says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death." He fell with his face to the ground and he prayed, "Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." 3 times he prayed. 3 times he found the disciples sleeping. And 3 times he surrendered his will again to the Father. And then the hour came. A mob arrived with swords and clubs, and Judas was at the front. He greeted Jesus with a kiss, and Jesus said, "Friend, do what you came for." And so they seized him. Peter drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear, but Jesus told him to put it away. "Do you not think that I cannot call on my Father, and he will have at once send more than 12 legions of angels?" But the scriptures had to be fulfilled, so he went willingly. And the disciples fled. Every one of them. They led him to the house of Caiaphas. There, in the dark of night, the trial began. False witnesses stood. The high priest demanded, "Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." And Jesus said, "You have said so." But then he added, but I say to you, to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. The high priest tore his robes. He has spoken blasphemy. They spit in his face. They struck him with their fists. They mocked him. Now Peter stood outside watching. And when he was asked if he knew Jesus, he denied it 3 times. And when the rooster crowed, he wept bitterly. By morning, the verdict was in. They bound him and they led him away. They handed him over to Pilate, the Roman governor, and Pilate questioned him, Are you the king of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. But he said nothing in his own defense. And the crowd was offered a choice, Barabbas or Jesus. And they chose Barabbas. Now Pilate, seeing the riot begin, washed his hands. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. And the people cried out, his blood is on us and on our children. And so they whipped him. And they handed him over to be crucified. And then the soldiers took him. And they stripped him. The Son of God, naked. The one who clothed Adam and Eve in the garden, now fully exposed, humiliated, vulnerable. The King of glory, robbed of dignity. They dressed him in a scarlet robe. They twisted together a crown of thorns and shoved it onto his head. They mocked him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they spat on him. They beat him. And when they were done, they led him out to crucify him. And they made him carry his own cross, but his back was too broken from the beating. So they grabbed a man from the crowd, Simon of Cyrene, a bystander turned burden bearer. A stranger pressed into the story. And maybe that's where we find ourselves today, caught up in something that we didn't ask for, but compelled nevertheless to carry the weight of it. And so they led him to Golgotha, the place of the skull. Not a poetic hill, but a killing field. A place of death. A place where the world says, this is what happens when you go too far. Now they offered him wine mixed with gall, a mercy of sorts, a painkiller. But Jesus tasted it and turned away. He would drink the cup, just not that one. He would feel every ounce of the world's sin and pain, not numbed, not dulled, but conscious, present for you and for me. And they cast lots for his clothes as if his life was a game. As if the spoils of suffering were worth gambling for. And they nailed him to a cross. And they sat down to watch him die. And this is how they watched the king, not with reverence, but with ridicule. Not with worship, but with mockery. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews, the sign above him read. And they laughed. But that mockery, that place is holy ground. Because that sign told a truth that they could not see. He was king. But not the kind that they had wanted. Not the kind that they had hoped for. This king came to reign by surrender. To conquer by being conquered. To redeem not by escaping death, but by absorbing it. And then the darkness came. Not clouds, not shade, darkness. From noon to 3, the sun refused to shine. Creation itself mourned as if the universe couldn't bear to watch. And then he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me? This is the cry of Psalm 22. The cry of the righteous sufferer. And not whispered, not mumbled, but screamed. This is not sanitized theology, but blood and breath and anguish. This is the cost of redemption. And yet, even in his forsakenness, he cries out, "My God." Even in his pain, he prays. Even in the absence, he still clings. This isn't nihilism, it's faith that bleeds. Now, they thought he was calling out for Elijah. They didn't understand. How could they? How could anyone understand what it means for God to die? They waited to see if Elijah would save him. But he wasn't waiting to be rescued. He was rescuing us. And then he cried out again in a loud voice and gave up his spirit. Not taken, but given. Not stolen, but surrendered. Jesus didn't die when they killed him. He died when he gave himself up. He chose this for you and for me. And then the world broke open. The curtain tore. The veil that separated God from man split from top to bottom as if the Father himself ripped it apart. No more barrier, no more division, no more separation. Because the cross didn't just open a wound, it opened a way. And the earth shook. Rocks split. Tombs broke open and the dead woke up. Because you see, when the author of life dies, death itself begins to unravel. The curse starts to reverse, and resurrection starts early. Even the Roman centurion, a man who had likely killed hundreds, he saw it. He saw the sky. He felt the quake. He watched him die. And said the words that we still say today, "Surely he was the Son of God." What happened on that cross was not an accident, not an unfortunate misunderstanding. It was a revolution, a coronation, a sacrifice, an offering. He died because of his great love for us. He died because he wouldn't stop healing the sick, touching the lepers, welcoming the outcasts, confronting the powerful, eating with sinners, offering grace, and claiming to be the way. This is the story. God died for us. But what kind of God does this? What kind of king hangs on a tree? It's a God who sees your shame and he carries it. A king who bears your weight. A Savior who bleeds for your wholeness. Jesus is not explaining suffering tonight. He's embodying it. He is taking it into himself. This is not a theory. This is the body broken. This is the blood poured out. This is love made visible. And so tonight, we stand at the cross, not rushing ahead to resurrection, not turning away from the pain, but looking, lingering, listening. Because this is what love looks like. Nails, blood, a broken body, a broken world, and a God who won't look away. God is not far. He's not far from your pain. He's not far from your grief. He's not far from your sorrow. He's not far from your shame, your doubt, your insecurities, your unspoken longings. He is not far. God has come near. He has entered in. Because God was on the cross. Which means you are not defined by what you've done. You're defined by what he did. At the cross, Jesus took our place so that we could find our place in his kingdom. And maybe that's why, out of all the deaths in human history, we call this one the crucifixion. This is the crucifixion. This is the cross, not a prop, not a metaphor, not a decoration. This is where sin met love, where wrath met mercy, where death met life, and love won. He took our place so that we could find our place in his kingdom. And so tonight, don't rush to resurrection. Linger at the cross. We hold the bread, his body, and lift the cup, his blood, and we remember. Not because we love suffering, but because we're loved through it. Because the King bled for us. The King gave himself for us. And this King still invites us to the table. So come, not because you've earned it, but because you need it. And hear the good news again, that the King has taken your place so that you can find your place in his kingdom. Not the table of victory, not yet, but the table of love. Come with empty hands, open hearts, and a trembling hallelujah.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on our YouTube channel today. I hope that you felt the welcome home of Christ right through your screen. Here we believe that the gospel is good news worth sharing. So if you'd like to share this stream with your friends and family, you can also subscribe to this channel and you can use @BridgeChurchTN. Also, if you'd like to give, there's a link in the description there you can click and it'll walk you through all the steps. And if you'd like to stay connected with us, you can simply head on over to bridge.tv. Hope to see you again soon.